The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops is speaking out against some of the newer forms of burying the deceased. In a recent statement, the USCCB raised the alarm over the methods like human composting. They say it not only shows disrespect to the human body, but it falls short on respect for the dead, which is a requirement by the Catholic faith. Human composting is legal in a handful of states, most recently in California. Let's check in with Robert Seelig, CEO and founder of the Catholic Funeral and Cemetery Services. Robert, great to have you with us. First off, tell us more about this human composting. I mean, is it like turning grandmother into a rose bush or something?
Well, hi, Eric. First off, it's nice to be with you.
Thank you.
Just a little bit about Catholic Funeral and Cemetery Services. We are a nonprofit owned by the church, operated basically to serve the Catholic Church across the United States. So we operate funeral homes and cemeteries. And so as you talk about disposition of human remains, the church has always taught that burial was the preference. And as technology changes, we start to hear about new things. So cremation was permitted after Vatican II, it's permissive, but the preference has always been burial, just as Christ was laid in the tomb and we come upon Good Friday, it reminds us of that burial practice. And so when you bring up human composting, our minds move to gardening and to rose bushes. And so the bishops came out with, actually the Vatican asked the U.S. Conference of Bishops to actually issue some doctrine on this, just so that Catholics could understand what these new technologies are and understand what they mean and how they apply to their lives. So there were two kind of technologies that have more recently been approved in various states. One is human composting. Human composting is actually the placement of a body in a cylinder where soil is placed in it and other organic materials. And over a period of 30 days, the body is kind of rotated and broken down into soil. And what you end up with is basically a cubic yard of soil, and what the companies are that are promoting this are suggesting that you take the soil and spread them wherever you want, in your lawn or rose garden or somewhere else, or use it in a planter. And so the bishops were asked to actually just come back and speak to that issue, which is just that, it's not the proper treatment of human remains, that we don't actually bury them in a cemetery, that we don't have the dignified, the dignity of the human body is not respected in the process. And so therefore we're left with this kind of problem in the way that we kind of deal with the remains.
Well, you are certainly a leading Catholic voice on funerals and burying the dead out there, but talk to us a little bit about, are these trends, are we starting to see a lot of these trends? Is it popular?
Yeah. Well, I think that the best way of putting it is that as we become more ecologically minded in our country, there's businesses, and businesses want to take advantage and promote new programs. So in many ways, with the burial of the dead, there's a desire to look at alternative technologies. But the reality is that we have some of those solutions already in place, right? We have our Catholic cemeteries. You can have the body cremated and reducing space and place those in a Catholic cemetery as well. There are also what are called green burial sections, where you can actually take the remains of the body and rather than embalming it or placing it in a casket, you can actually bury it in a green burial section in a cemetery. So there have been responses to it, but as with all good ideas, there's new ideas that come along that sometimes have some theological issues that the bishops need to address.
Most definitely. And in some countries, it's just a matter of space, correct?
Yeah. The tradition in Europe, where we had cemeteries for, over 1,000 years, is that as those cemeteries fill, they have a process whereby they remove the remains and condense them and still keep them in the cemetery in an appropriate manner. And so often we reuse those graves in Europe and other places. In the United States, we don't have an issue of land or space, so we still have the appropriate ways to deal with these issues. But as we all look at carbon footprint and other issues, there's always kind of new, more secular technologies that are kind of pushing the envelope.
Well, thank you so much for your insight. Robert Seelig, CEO and founder of the Catholic Funeral and Cemetery Services. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Eric.